Over at the Continuous Delivery channel, Trisha G has a new video about the link between developer productivity and happiness, so I thought we should take a look.
I feel very strongly that increasing developer productivity is not about demanding developers to work harder or to push through obstacles. I care a lot about this topic because I believe that getting what we need and what we want will also have the lovely upside of producing more and/or better code, features, or fixes for the organizations we work for. In this video, I'm going to talk about why we may enjoy our jobs, what sucks about being a developer, how to introduce more fun into our day, and why this is a good thing.
Yeah, this is all great stuff, and I think it gets at something really important when it comes to having and maintaining a high-performing team. It is not just that treating people well and managing work-life balance and all of that stuff is the right thing to do, which it is, but that also you can get superior performance and output from your team by pursuing these goals. Now, Trisha doesn't mention this, but I've been harping on this point for years and years and years and years. Team and employee turnover is incredibly expensive. There's the knowledge loss, there's the time you have to take to bring new people in, there's the gap of not having a resource to fill that work, and just being able to dull that a little bit would be a massive savings for lots and lots of companies. But there is a bit of a problem where, especially in contract work, managers are often not tied, their performance is not really tied, and not in a significant way, to the costs of turnover, right? If you have to pay for these new people, pay for onboarding, that is situated somewhere else on the ledger, and less so with a project manager or a scrum master who is not paying attention to the stuff and doesn't really care, but is causing these kinds of problems. We're actually going to touch on a lot of these topics in an upcoming video about the importance of enthusiastic and engaged employees, but for now, let's check out the rest of the video.
In the book, The Mythical Man Month, Fred Brooks states 5 things which make programming enjoyable. Firstly, the sheer joy of making things. Secondly, the pleasure of making things that are useful to other people. Thirdly, the fascination of fashioning complex puzzle-like objects of interlocking moving parts and watching them work. Fourthly, the joy of always learning. And finally, the delight of working in such a tractable medium.
Yeah, I need to double down on this one for a minute and point out, your developers, they really want to be developers. They really want to develop. They really want to do that. What they don't want to do, and they really don't, are all of these other parts of the job. A few years ago, I had a client who came up to me, one of the managers, and he said, I'm a little concerned. I feel like our engineers are a little unmotivated. And I said, well, what did you do? And he was surprised. He said, what do you mean? What do you think? He was nice about it. He said, why do you think that we did anything about it? I said, engineers are motivated to be engineers. Like, this was not a casual decision they made to pursue their career. Becoming a software engineer required lots and lots of work, lots of studying in school, in college, and maybe they got an advanced degree, maybe they didn't, but I mean, there were parties that even of the parties that they did get invited to, there were ones that they turned down because they had to do work for the degree that they got and because they love this stuff so much. They are motivated to do this work. The problem is they're not motivated to do a lot of these other things. And if you see people who are coming in every day who supposedly are supposed to be doing this job for you, and they are unmotivated, but they're coming from a field that only really motivated people get into, you might want to take a look at that.
I asked developers on social media why they like programming, and many of them gave replies which match these 5 things. I think we can agree that one or more of these points resonates with us and is why we find programming so interesting. So let's look at the flip side. Why do we hate our jobs? We hate our jobs, or at least don't enjoy them as much as we would like, because we have toil. Things like waiting for builds, things like struggling to write and debug automated tests, things like flaky tests, things like painful deployment processes, like trying to get containers to work when what we really want to be doing is writing code.
This is really good. Let me add something that I think often gets overlooked in a lot of these conversations. I mean a lot of the things that developers and team members hate about their job, these things that they hate doing that Trisha mentioned here, these are a lot of the same things that the organization itself has an interest in removing for their reasons. And the problem is that we usually frame these things from this sort of more abstract or academic perspective with fancy books and the like. And what would actually be more persuasive to a lot of people is to take these formal terms and these abstract ideas and really translate them into something actionable, something real, something that sounds like, real life, the real thing that they're dealing with. And if you can do that, you as a scrum master or a facilitator or a manager or a coach or whoever you are, you have to be that bridge in the middle, because there's so much great learning out there, but it's easy for some people to understand. Like I get a lot of this stuff, but it's not the kind of thing. We're talking before about engineers are motivated, they want to be engineers, developers want to be developers. None of those people wanted to be like process workflow experts, right? They didn't want to be facilitators. They didn't want to be the person at the front of the room getting everybody really jazzed up about what a great day we're going to have solving some problem or writing a team working agreement. That's kind of the stuff that they don't want to do. So they often just miss a lot of this knowledge in the first place. But there is this alignment, and it's really, really important to understand. You as the enterprise, you as the boss, you as the manager, you don't want to pay developers for sitting around waiting for environment access, for ports to be opened, for test date, all of the things that they have to wait for. But here's the beauty of it. They hate waiting too. They hate it too. So you've got you've got this motivation. Figure out a way to bridge these two groups, bridge the terminology they're using. And then, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in some follow-up videos, if you can identify, if you can inform and educate your team members so that they understand all of these things that you hate, you need to tell us that they're happening. You need to tell us they're happening. You need to bring them up in the retro so that we can solve the problem, because I, the facilitator or the PM or the portfolio manager or whoever it is, they don't have eyes on everything. But if the team is out there and you inform and you educate them, and now they understand that these are the things that they should be bringing up, these are the things that you hate as well, that's when you can really get a lot of improvements made.
My personal preference for solving some of these problems is tooling. For example, we can use AI to help write our code. It can help generate boring code or predictable code. I would argue it's also possible to use AI to take away some of the fun stuff that we like, as well as the toil. But we can use tools like AI to do some of the heavy lifting. Tools like IDEs and productivity tools can automate or speed up many of the frustrating activities. There are languages and frameworks that minimize the boilerplate and predictable code, so we can concentrate more on the fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to have to piggyback on this one, because Trisha is giving some really great advice here on how to fix these problems, but my dummy, non-technical brain is wondering, well, which one of these should we do? See, if you go to your team with a solution in hand, a lot of the times they might be excited about it, or they might feel like you are sort of bringing your own solution to a problem, and then there's some resistance. I've had this problem sometimes in the past where I want to bring a lot of these agile techniques to them, and we want to try some of these things, but because I have a less technical background, it's hard, because they start asking some questions about how to make a lot of these things work, and it's difficult for me to answer them. But then that's where my team facilitator agile coach brain steps in, and I say, hey, let's trick the team into making these decisions for you. So at the risk of self-promotion, I would recommend that you check out the video that we just did on classic problem facilitation for advice on how to do a little lightweight professional preference check with your team. Now, you could do this as part of like a working agreement event. You could do it as a retrospective. Again, the exercise only takes 10 minutes. It is lightning fast. But if you frame this exercise around these two questions, what parts of software development do you hate doing, and what parts of software development are your favorite? right? What are the ones that we want to get rid of, and what are the areas that we want to focus on? Now, be sure to ask them in that order, because everyone loves complaint. People are willing to complain. If you open up, you say, what are the worst parts of this? People can go. But when you start opening with, like, what are your favorite parts of the job, it's a little soft. You don't get as good answers. But once you open it up, they can give you some more answers out of this. Now, once you get those answers up on the wall, ask the teams to vote about which of these are the biggest ones, which do they feel is the biggest presence on your team, and combined with, how much do they dislike it. Maybe there's one thing they really dislike a lot, but it doesn't really come up so much on the team, and instead they should talk about something that does happen all the time. And if you can do that, you've got them, because you've just gotten your team to coalesce. You've gotten them to tell you all of the things that they don't like, and you've gotten them now to agree on the parts that they don't like and the things that they would like to go do. They would love everything that Trisha was just talking about here. They would love all of that stuff. They'd love some of these AI tools. They would love automating more of these processes. They would love, I don't know, just taking a sprint and tearing out some of the really annoying parts of their workflow and replacing it with some improved, whatever it is. That's the beauty of this, and that's why I really get up in the morning every day to facilitate and to do this stuff, because I see people, I see the benefit that you get out of this by bringing these people together who know their stuff. They really know their stuff. They are invested in this. And if you can make it into something that they care about, and you just frame it like that, like, what are the worst parts of this job? What are the things that you think we should be doing? They'll take off like a rocket, and they will run after that improvement that you want to make, and they will run after that problem. And if you give them the bandwidth and the space to get that stuff done, they will deliver all kinds of stuff. And again, I keep harping on this. It's so much better to get these ideas from the team. Like, the best book idea from anywhere in here. Do you know how many ideas are on this shelf behind me that don't apply to any particular team that I'm working on at any given moment? I mean, just think about that for a minute. How many times you read one of these books, like, man, there's great ideas, there's great ideas, there's great ideas. And if you actually think about it, you see, like, we're not doing most of this. Like, there are great solutions to problems, but my team isn't having these problems. That's why you facilitate, and that's why you ask these nice open-ended questions for your team, because your team, they've got ideas. They have lots of ideas, and they will bring them out to you. And then you can ride that motivation all the way to success. Oh, actually, sorry, just one more thought before we go back. Remember all that success I told you? Yeah. One quick tip. You're going to want to you're going to want to put up a whip limit on these improvements. Yeah, because I've seen teams get too excited. They get like, sometimes you open the floodgates and they just come pouring out, and there are things that they want to improve. So the only thing I would sort of hold down the excitement there is you got to channel it a little bit and say, okay, we're going to pick one of these improvements or one of these problems to work on at a time. We can't have everybody doing every which thing. You got to really sort of focus your efforts there. Okay, back to the video.
The second angle, which I think we should be concentrating equally hard on, or possibly more on, is how can we bring back the joy to our jobs? And surprisingly, one of the answers is to create boredom. This might seem odd because boredom is surely the opposite of fun. When my kids say, I'm bored, they're definitely not saying, I'm having fun, Mum. But creating boredom is very important. It creates space for us to breathe, for us to just let things simmer through our brains, to let ideas bubble up to the surface. There's science behind this. The default mode network is the part of the brain that's active when you're not focused on solving a problem or achieving something. And when you're using it, you're processing things in a different way. You've probably experienced this yourself. How many times has a solution to the problem you've been staring at all day come to you when you're in the shower? How many times have you had a bright idea when you're out for a run or you're in the gym? There are plenty of activities that can trigger the default mode network, like gardening, laundry, unloading the dishwasher.
You know, I hadn't heard of this term, default mode network, before. It sounds an awful lot like what John Cleese talks about when he's lecturing about I think it's called open brain, closed brain dynamic. I was thinking about doing a video on that. There's a lot to go in there. It's a really interesting idea. But for now, let me recommend everyone here that you take Trisha's advice on your own team and consider, even if you're not on the team, let yourself go for a walk. Let yourself get some fresh air when you are stuck on a problem. These other examples she gives are really great, but more than anything, what I found with people is you need to understand it is okay to work. Think of it this way: you're working non-linearly. So instead of just sitting at your desk and head down and staring at this blank screen and just pushing yourself to get to some solution, it is okay to make a conscious decision to get up and go for a walk, or get up. If you're working remotely, you might have to do this anyway. Get up and take a shower, or do something rote, something with your hands maybe. I do, mechanical keyboards are kind of fun. Sometimes you need a mental break. You're feeling stressed. You're working on some problem. It is okay to take 5 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever. By the way, you can give yourself half an hour, and if you get in the zone, you might have a breakthrough in 6 minutes, and then put the thing away and go back and fix the problem. But sometimes I'll just start picking apart the keycaps on a keyboard, or change the switches or something. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things, lots of ways. Keep your hands occupied, and it opens up the rest of your mind.
The key point here is that we shouldn't be cramming our days so full of stuff that we're always busy, or cramming our brains so full that we can't think. We actually need to embrace the dead time. We can use the dead time for problem solving, for thinking, for staring into space, for play. Play and fun have business value. There's been tons of studies on this. For example, piglet litters grow faster if they play more. There's a positive physical impact of playing with your siblings, with your friends, with your peers. Also, your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. We all know this from experience, but it can lead to difficult conversations with your boss. I'm so busy doing so many things that I actually couldn't get anything done. What's surprising about this research is sometimes it's as simple as watching cat videos that makes you more productive. This study showed that those who watch funny videos were more productive than those who just moved from task to task. Research shows fun is good for business.
This is another good topic to talk about. It's sort of related to the last one. I really like this. I'm a big fan. It's over there. I'm a big fan of Ali Abdaal and his book Feel Good Productivity. And Trisha is really right. It's kind of crazy, some of these little mind hacks that you can do, and you can put yourself into a more creative and productive space by getting yourself in a good mood. And don't forget, developing software, it is a creative thing. So, anything you hear about, any sort of ways to improve productivity related to creativity, you should really think about that. That applies to you. It applies to all of us. And again, if the team instantiates this and actually institutionalizes this and says it is okay to do these kinds of things, it's also okay to say something like, yeah, I'm stepping away from my desk for 5 minutes to go, like she says, maybe watch a cat video or something. I mean, I could almost imagine you could see a team doing this at the end of a stand-up, right? Or other meetings, just having something sort of kicking off the day. Again, launching yourself into the rest of your morning with something feel good, something happy. You could leverage this yourself if I use a lot, it's really helpful, the Pomodoro technique. So you set the timer on your phone and you go for 25 minutes, then you take a break, then you have 5 minutes to get up and stretch and do whatever. But if you're getting back into something, maybe get a list of YouTube shorts that you like, that are really funny and always make you laugh, and just make sure you don't, you just watch one.
So, having fun at work, playing, making space to be creative is not introducing some level of waste. It's a double win. We feel better, we're more creative, and we're more productive. In fact, if we look at the SPACE framework for measuring developer productivity, SPACE has 5 different aspects to measure for developer productivity. And those aspects are satisfaction and well-being right at the top. Well, maybe it's because it begins with S and SPACE is a nice acronym. But satisfaction and well-being, performance, activity, communication and collaboration, efficiency and flow. When we talk about developer productivity, we often fall into the trap of looking at activity only, commits, lines of code, pull requests, number of deploys, things like that, because those things are easy to measure. But that's only one aspect of quite a complicated picture around what makes a developer productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the last point I want to address. It's sort of an interesting one. This is a wall that I have hit a number of times whenever I try to do something more fun or outside the box with the team, whether or not the client believes that the thing I'm going to do will actually be fun or enjoyable for everyone. That's a separate question. But there's often a little bit of pushback when you start talking about taking time out of the team's formal schedule or asking for money to do something enjoyable or like a team building event. And part of that, I think, is you can see the cost. You can see the cost. People agree that happiness and fulfillment are good, but when you're comparing the literal cost of like the team's not working for a few hours versus happiness, it's hard to measure that. It's hard to measure the happiness, but there's a trick you can use. There's something you can sort of use to get around this. Remember what you're trying to do, you're trying to yield out of all of this, and what you believe, and what I believe, and it's true, is, again, this happiness and fulfillment does improve productivity. So in a weird way, even though you can't measure happiness, like I can't, put a thermometer in your ear or take a blood test or something and measure your happiness, what we can do is we can try some of these practices. You can put them in your working agreement. You can just generally give advice for teams. You can try this for yourself at home, whatever it is you're doing. You can try this, and then you can compare over time by adding these new practices and policies and everything else we figured out how to do. It will downstream show up in your other numbers. So it might show up in things like wait time. It might show up in things like lead time, in defect count. And I know a lot of these are the continuous integration channel. They're very, very big on lead time and these metrics that can't be messed with, and I agree with that. But on the other hand, in the real world, a lot of places are not as advanced as the continuous delivery people, and so they have metrics that aren't quite as empirical, but they're there nevertheless, right? And so that's a way that you can sort of move downstream the justification for doing some of these things. You can say, well, I think it's going to make us more productive and we're going to reduce wait time. Let's look at things like wait time. Or you could start documenting the amount of time that team members are, again, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, how much time are they waiting for things? Now, that one you might not think of an immediate connection with something like happiness and productivity, but as we will talk about in our video about team engagement, I have found that actually not to be the case, because what I've seen is if you have people who are motivated and energized and they care about what they're doing, again, going back to that, also the exercise we had about, what are the parts of this job that you don't like the most? When people are really jazzed up and they're really motivated, they will do crazy things like get up out of their chair and walk down the hall and knock on the door of the guy whose request they just sent to, instead of waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and they feel introverted and awkward and they don't know what to do, and all you can do is just wait, and they're wasting time and there's nothing to do, and they're sort of treading water looking for something to do. But if they are motivated, if they're happy and engaged with the work, they will want the thing to happen. They will remember that they want to do all of these things, and they will get up and actually go find a solution to the problem rather than just sitting around. Anyway, those are my takeaways from the video. There's a lot more detail in what she covered than what we covered today, so please go take a look. What do you think about this? I feel like it's incredibly intuitive that happy developers would do better at their jobs, just like happy anybody does better at anything. But like we talked about, it can be a tough thing to prove or to measure or to sell to people. I've got a lot of ideas for more stuff on this. If you think this is something that you'd like to know more about, we want to talk about how to run a game day with your team. I've done that. That was fantastically successful. I got a lot of thoughts on that. That's in the queue, but if you want them to come forward, or if you've had any luck yourself, I would love to hear if you've tried anything like this. Again, small stuff, even little things. The smallest ones I think are so helpful, because if it's just some little thing that, like, oh, every day at lunch we bring a deck of cards and we're able to do this thing and we always feel good after we eat, that kind of thing. A lot of those little things, you get your foot in the door with those kinds of things, both with the team members understanding that this is a good thing, I like this, yeah, we should be doing this, but then also management seeing, hey, ever since you guys have been having your team lunches, you seem really energized in the back half of the day. Is there anything that we can do for that? Anyway, as always, in the description below, we've got a link to download the episode notes. We've got some more thoughts on that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back soon.